creativity.
Hey everybody, I'm Ebony. This is Ebony's Creativity. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel. Today I am going to be doing a little bit of an upcycle on my dining room table. I'll show you some clips that will let you know that it's seen better days. I got it for free and it serves its purpose well how it is now, but I just want it to look a little bit nicer. And we're snowed in today, so I decided today is the day that I will go ahead and paint it up. So I want to make it match my buffet a little bit better, and I'll kind of give you a pan around the room so you can see, but it just has some areas that just really need some loving, and I'm gonna just go ahead and paint it. It's solid wood, so should be an easy paint up. I'm gonna just give it a scuff sand and paint it. This should be a really quick flip, but I am gonna try whitewashing, which I have tried maybe once before. I'm not a professional at it, so I don't know how this is going to turn out, but we're going to find out together, and you can let me know in the comment section how you think it turned out. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and let's go ahead and hop right into it. All right, so as you can see, there are like food stains. Some of the, whoever refinished this before didn't do that great of a job. So some of their paint has come off. This part is the leaf. So I didn't push it all together. I just kind of threw it up there. But normally I just have this panel here and that panel, and I kind of have it squeezed in together with no leaf in it. But I just had a vision board party for New Year's, and then I realized the leaf doesn't even match the other two sections, and so I took it out so I can paint them all up. I like the legs as they are. They're kind of a distressed look, so I might leave those how they are, but I do want to get all of this looking cohesive. So that's what we're going to work on today, and I want to try to get it to match this just a little bit better. This is my favorite furniture piece in my house, I think. Very nice. And here are my paint colors that I have on hand. Like I said, I'm snowed in, so I'm just using what I have. This is everything I have that is in that color family. So I think I'm gonna do, this is Cathedral Taupe as well. And it looks pretty good with this. So I think I'm just gonna stick with the bottom layer of Cathedral Taupe and then try to do my whitewashing with one of these two, maybe both, I don't know. In here, I can see some tones of like gray, but I kind of want to keep it light when I'm whitewashing because my chairs in here are light. My first step is going to be to do a scuff sanding on this table. I want to do the entire tabletop. And the purpose of this scuff sanding is to remove any particles that may be stuck onto the table, as well as to reduce the amount of top coat that may have been previously applied to this. That way I won't be painting over a slick surface. Up next, I'm going to take some simple green, and I am going to give a thorough cleaning to this table. I like using simple green because it does an effective job at cleaning as well as degreasing, but it's not too harsh in terms of chemicals, and you get a lot of it because it's concentrated, so you get a lot of it for your buck. In this clip, you can see me wiping the table down with a paper towel, but don't do that. Use a microfiber cloth instead, because the paper towel can sometimes leave behind little bits that you don't really want in your finish. Initially, I thought this was going to be much simpler than it turned out to be, so I didn't mention that I would be making repairs. I didn't really notice how chipped some of the areas were until I cleaned it, so I had to go in with my wood filler and my sanding sponge again and fill in a few areas that I knew would show through the paint if I just tried to paint over them. So after I filled and sanded all the areas, that were damaged. Then I did another cleaning with my simple green, and that time I did use a microfiber cloth to wipe back the cleaner and to rinse it off. And then my surface was perfectly ready to start painting. Normally I do prime everything that I paint. In this case I did not. One, because this table does not get that much use, and two, because the paint says that I don't have to. So before I noticed that I would have to do those repairs that I just did, I had already started painting. Then I looked over the piece and I was like, man, I need to stop. So I tried to wipe it back. You see a little bit of the remnants of where I first started to paint, but it's just paint. We're going over it. I have a mister bottle and I just misted the area that I'm going to be painting. I sprayed my brush as well as the table, and I sprayed this whole area that I'm going to be working in just to make sure that I maintain a wet edge while I am painting. So my first technique was to kind of just go up and down, doing the longest, straightest strokes that I can. But as you may be able to see, the paint started collecting around the edges. So my typical technique is just to get paint on the brush, get paint on the piece, whatever I'm painting, and then just do long strokes over it to sort it out, and which is kind of what you see me doing here, but the paint is collecting on the edge. So then I decided to kind of change my technique up a little bit and to just go ahead and do the full perimeter of the table first, and then go back over it, making sure that my second coat is nice and straight strokes like I would typically do. So I'm making my way around the table, and I just reapply paint to my brush whenever it starts to feel like it's dry and like it's kind of pulling. That will give you paint strokes, which we don't want in our finished pieces. So to avoid paint strokes, I just make sure I keep a wet edge. You'll notice that whenever I apply more paint, I am also using my mister, and it's just water in the mister bottle. I don't know if I said that. So now that I finished the edges, I am going back to what I was doing before, which is how I normally paint. I'm misting the table. I also misted the paint that's on my brush, and I am going to just go in long strokes and keeping my strokes in the same direction. After you finish the first coat of this is not intended to be full coverage on the first coat. So keep that in mind. I'll show you how my table looks after my first coat, and you're probably going to be like, what the heck? You're able to see with this Fusion mineral paint, particularly, you're able to see where you went vertically, where you went diagonally. So I always try to make sure that my final coat, I'm going in one direction, but for the first coat, it's preferable in my opinion, but not necessary. Like where I went horizontal with the edges, you will be able to see that line versus how I'm moving now, which is going vertically. So keep that in mind. This paint is not one coat coverage, and I will show you that once I'm done showing you how I'm doing this first coat. The goal here is really just to get the paint on. For my second coat, I will want to be a little bit more particular, but for my first one, I'm just getting the paint on. So keep that in mind, especially if you're using Fusion mineral paint. So here's how this looked after the first coat. Like I said, Fusion paint is not a one coat coverage in most cases, particularly not with these light colors. So as you can see, it looks kind of streaky. If you're painting and you get a finish like this after your first coat, do not worry. Like I promised, you're able to see the areas that are painted horizontally versus the areas that are painted vertically. So after my second coat, which I'm doing now, you'll be able to see an improvement in that. So just to reiterate what I already said, now that I'm actually showing you me applying my second coat, for me the goal with the first coat was just to get the paint on there, and for this coat I want to make sure that I'm doing long straight strokes and overlapping the previous stroke by about 30% to make sure everything is seamless. And I am using my mister again, just the same as I did the first time. And so, as you can see, when I run out of paint, I just go back to what I was doing before. Long, straight strokes. Overlapping by the previous stroke, with this method, you shouldn't have any problems. So in this clip, I'm finally finishing up the second coat. Still doing my same method of just staying in one direction. And as you can see, the coverage is opaque now and it is a really nice finish. So like I said, don't fret if you have issues after your first coat. Always do your assessment after the second coat. So now that my second coat is dry, I'm going in with this Country Chic paint, and the color is called Vanilla Frosting. And I was not sure how to make the recipe for whitewashing. I watched a couple of videos, probably not as many as I should. I know that when I've seen it done before and the time that I've tried to do it before, my recipe wasn't this watery. I had about a 1 to 3, 1 being the paint, 3 being the water recipe when I did this, and I don't know if that was too watery or if it was the correct recipe. I don't know, but that's what you see me applying here. And I kind of just felt like I wasn't in control of it. It was much more watery than what was making me feel comfortable. So I got kind of afraid with this method, and I just kind of stopped where I was, got me a microfiber cloth, and just started to wipe. I think if I had let it dry down some, it would have been okay. It would have kind of given me the same effect that I ended up with. But it was just really watery, and I got kind of scared, and I did not want to have to sand this down or do another another coat of the previous paint color. So I just kind of wiped it back. As you can see, there's still some of it remaining. I wasn't trying to necessarily wipe all of it off. I just kind of was playing with it. I wanted to see what would happen once I started wiping. Like I said, I think if I had let it dry down some, it would have been fine, but now it's too faint. So I just switched over to kind of a mixture of whitewashing and dry brushing. And at this point, the technique that I thought would be using kind of went out the window. And I just put some paint on that towelette. It's the same towel that I just used to wipe all that wetness from the middle section. So it's just a little bit damp. And what I did was just add some paint to the cloth. And I just literally, I squeezed out all the excess water out of the paintbrush. And so that's why I say it's dry brushing. My paint is dry except for the paint that's on there and the water that was remaining on the towel. And I just kind of freehandedly went in with that. And I thought that I was able to control that better, and I was able to see kind of the strokes that I was making a little bit better than when it was more runny. So this is the method that I felt more comfortable with. Here you can see that the right side has been done. I've done 1 coat of that, and I kind of just wiped it on with my brush and then let it dry. I didn't want to overdo it. I just wanted it to have that kind of rustic, distressed look that I was going for. So I'm doing the same thing in the middle section, kind of just relying on the moisture that's on the towel and the paint that's on there as well, and just making long straight strokes, as straight as I can anyways. As I'm working my way down the table, I'm using very little paint from the can. I'm actually just using my method of kind of a very stiff dry brush and a wet towelette. So when I do need to add a little bit more paint, If it gets too heavy, I'll wipe it back with the towelette so that no area is really a lot more dark or a lot more saturated with the white color than the others. Like I just dipped in the paint right here. So I'm really using my towel, the moisture on my towel, to work that in. I don't want those areas down there being a lot darker than the former areas that I painted. So hopefully that is making sense. I am very glad this is a visual and not just a talking, because you probably wouldn't know what the heck I was talking about. But the bottom line is I'm just working my towel with a very stiff, kind of a dry brush, very little moisture on the towel just to keep the paint moving. And I just am doing long strokes, trying to get an effect that I like and trying to make sure that my lines are not crooked. So once I was able to kind of finish one coat of this, I stepped back and I just did a once over every area that stood out too much, just with a dry brush. Literally, you can see me kind of just going over the whole thing and really paying attention to areas that I felt were sticking out a little bit too much. So they had too much white. I just blended them in. And after I finished that, I did maybe like 1.5 coats of that. This is how it turned out. So I liked the way that this looked, and I stopped here. Here's the top coat that I'm using. It's the Wipe On Matte Poly that comes with the Fusion line. And I have this little sponge. I don't quite remember where I got it from, but I know you can use the yellow ones that are at Dollar Tree as well. I did wet the sponge and then I wrung all of the water out. So literally I just wet it just so it can glide a little bit better, but there's no water being applied to the table. It's just to keep the sponge a little bit moist. And I'm starting out with the method of just kind of pouring the top coat onto the sponge, which is working fine. But as you can probably tell by the number of outfit changes, this table took more time than I expected it to. So I'm just trying to finish. At a certain point, I just get frustrated with pouring it on the sponge, and I just decided to pour it on the table and see what will happen. And nothing bad happened. And this top coat is really holding up well. And it does say that it's non-yellowing. And I have not noticed any yellowing. And this table has been done for about 1.5 weeks now. So I think we're off to a great start with the table and this top coat. Normally I use the polyacrylic in a satin finish. So let me know in the comment section below, what is your favorite top coat? So I did do 2 coats of top coat. Now I am ready to do the reveal, but first I want to remind you where we started from. And just in case you're curious, I did decide to push it back down to 2 panels instead of utilizing the 3. So this is how the table looked once I added my little decor back. But then I decided, it's been a couple of weeks since I gave you guys a video. This decor wasn't really saying creative. It wasn't really me. So I decided to punch it up a notch, and here is how my final tablescape looks. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. Leave me a comment and let me know what your favorite top coat is and how you think this flip turned out. If you have the time, please select another one of my videos to watch from the choices on your screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.